Good afternoon. The meeting of the MDC Hearing Examiner for June 23rd, 2022 will now come to order. Obviously, we have quite a few people here today, so I have a couple of announcements before I read the rules of procedure. If you do have your cell phones on, please turn them off. And if you do need to have conversation, please go out in the hall to do that. The way the acoustics are in here, any sound is carried forward. The hearing today will be conducted in accordance with the rules of procedure of the Metropolitan Development Commission. Each party will have 15 minutes for their original presentation. We will hear the staff recommendation, and then each party will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Any party who is dissatisfied with the recommendation made today has an automatic right to an appeal. The dissatisfied party must file the appeal with the Department of Metropolitan Development within 5 business days. Additional notice of the appeal is also required to be made to the individuals requiring notice by the MDC rules of procedure. All petitions for which I make a recommendation to the Metropolitan Development Commission regarding approval or denial will be forwarded to the Commission meeting on July 20th, 2022. Any commitments agreed to must be submitted to staff no later than Wednesday, July 13th. We will now begin with special requests, including withdrawals and continuances. I am first going to start with the written requests, which will be read into the record by Nancy, and then we will take requests from the audience.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. First, we have petitions to be withdrawn. 2021 ZON 109 at 8250 Southeastern Avenue. It fronts Franklin Road, Franklin Township, Council District 18. We also have 2022 CVR 816 and 2022 CPL 816 at 2304 North College Avenue, Center Township, Council District 17. And also, we have a request for a companion petition 2021 CVR 858 amended at 5380 and 5390 Rockville Road, Wayne Township, Council District 15.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to take these petitions one at a time. Is there anyone here to speak to the withdrawal of petition 2021 ZON 109 at 8250 Southeastern Avenue, fronts on Franklin Road? Mr. Calderon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wortz-Hall, Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian, Indianapolis. I represent the petitioner in this matter, and we did indicate to Kathleen that we were going to withdraw the petition. I don't know if there's any opportunity for any kind of refund, the partial refund of the filing fee or not, but we're fine either way, because it was around for a while.
Okay, is anyone else here in the audience for 2021 ZON 109? Okay, Kathleen, any comments?
Thank you, Judy. You'll note that they did request a refund, and staff did do some figuring of that. Actually, let me pull that up.
The $1,588? That was in the staff report.
Yes. Yes, it was, yeah. That's based upon what had occurred up to that point.
Mm-hmm. So you're comfortable with that amount?
Yes.
Okay. So I am going to recognize the withdrawal of 2021 ZON 109 and approve the refund in the amount of $1,588.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone here on the withdrawal of companion petitions 2022 CVR and CPL 816 at 2304 North College Avenue? Mr. Kingan.
Thank you, Ms. Wortz-Hall. David Kingan with offices at 6180 East Market Street here on 2022 CVR and 816 and CPL 816, representing Sherry Minkus. We did request a withdraw these petitions. There's been an illness in the family, and did not allow Mrs. Minkus to continue pursuit of those, and so we did ask for a partial refund on those two petitions also. Please.
Okay, anyone in the audience on the withdrawal of companion petitions 2022 CVR and CPL 816 at 2304 North College Avenue? And Allison, do you have any comments on the refund?
Yes, thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Staff would support a refund of half the filing fee.
And what is that?
I don't know.
Okay, well, so 50% of the filing
Yes.
fee? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So I am going to acknowledge the withdrawal of companion petitions 2022 CVR and CPL 816 with the refund in the amount of 50% of the original filing fee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then finally, the companion variance petition 2021 CVR 858 at 5380 and 5390 Rockville Road. Mr. Calderon, do you have any comments on that?
You said CVR 858, correct?
CVR 858?
Yeah, the other two will remain. The variance can be withdrawn. It was for fence height, and we reduced the fence height.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and anyone else here on the withdrawal of the variance at 5380 and 5390 Rockville Road, 2021 CVR 858? Okay, and Kathleen, any comments?
Thank you, Judy. Staff has no further comments.
Okay, so I will also acknowledge the withdrawal of 2021 CVR 858.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have petitions with, they have filed automatic continuance to July 28, 2022. First is 2022 ZON 062 at 6900 East 21st Street, Warren Township, Council District 19.
Is there anyone here on the automatic continuance for 2022 ZON 062 at 6900 East 21st Street? Okay, and Keith, any comments?
No comments.
Okay, so with the automatic continuances, they have to meet certain criteria, and as it sounds, there really is not much input required, because if they meet the requirements, it is automatic, but we always like to go through and acknowledge those. So 2022 ZON 062 automatically continued to July 28th.
We also have petition 2022 ZON 071 at 7820 West Washington Street, Wayne Township, Council District 22.
Anyone in the audience want to comment on that automatic continuance at 7820 West Washington Street? Kathleen, any additional comments?
Thank you, Judy. The only additional comment staff would have is this would just require your acknowledgement.
Okay, so I will acknowledge the automatic continuance of 2022 ZON 071 to the July 28th hearing.
Next, we have companion petitions 2022 CAP 831 and 2022 CVR 831 at 1616 East 25th Street, Center Township, Council District 17.
Okay, and it's my understanding these are going to remain automatically as requested. Anyone here on companion petitions 2022 CAP and CVR 831 at 1616 East 25th Street? Good afternoon.
Andre Denman, park planner for the city of Indianapolis for this case. Do you need my address or what?
Please.
1200 Madison Avenue, 46225. So the reason I'm up here, the party that asked for the continuance, we believe we've worked out the issue on it, but we were told they needed to come here to ask for that continuance to be rescinded. They're on their way, and so I don't know. I'm in a gray area here, so.
Okay, so Keith, any comments?
I believe we could wait and to see if Mrs. McMillan-Gunn does arrive.
Okay, we can do that regardless, just so you know, I am very unlikely to grant the withdrawal of the automatic continuance, just because the rules say that once you file it and it's been stamped in, you can't.
Yes.
We might be able to continue it to a sooner date, but that's where I'm headed, so
Okay.
I don't know. It sounds like we need to wait for her regardless.
Yeah, we need to wait because the
Okay.
issues that they actually brought up for the continuance had nothing to do with the variance request. They were ancillary items. They literally had nothing to do with.
Okay.
So
And-
that's
and
why,
that's-
yeah.
I don't mean to be flip, but
I know,
that's
I
nothing
know.
new, so.
Yeah.
And you understand the rules.
I understand, yeah.
So let's just wait until she gets here, and hopefully it'll be while we're still going through these original special requests, and
All
you
right.
just kind of wave at me and we can talk about it then, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denman.
Okay, moving on to petitions requested to be continued to July 14th, 2022. First, we have 2022 ZON 059 and its companion 2022 VAR 004 at 1902 Alvord Street, Center Township, Council District 17.
Is anyone here besides Mr. Tui on the continuance request for companion petitions 2022 ZON 059 and VAR 004 at 1902 Alvord Street? Mr. Tui.
Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Officer Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. We represent the petitioner in 22 ZON 059 and 22 VAR 004. Between us and staff, we're respectfully requesting a continuance without notice to the July 14th hearing to make some adjustments to the site plan. I suspect, or it feels like we've about got it worked out, but we just needed some more time to not appear before you today and not have it done. So that's the reason for that request. Thank
Okay,
you.
are you aware of anyone else that might be here for those petitions?
I'm not, but I had a conversation with a group of neighbors and advised them that I was going, that I thought this would happen. I said, you know, it was subject to your approval, but. yeah.
Okay, so just one more time, anyone here on 1902 Alvord Street? Okay, Keith, Keith, any additional comments?
No additional comments.
Okay, so I will continue 2022 ZON 059 and 2022 VAR 004 to the July 14th hearing.
And that's without notice,
That's
please.
without notice, yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have 2022 ZON 066 at 11,015 and 11,127 East 46th Street, Lawrence Township, Council District 14.
Again, for the record, Madam Hearing Examiner Brian Toohey, 50 South Meridian, representing the petitioner on 2022 ZON 066. The staff has made some recommendations, which I think, again, we're probably on board with for the most part. We've resubmitted a site plan to them. There's one issue about a street connection, and so we would respectfully request that continuance to the July 14th date of the hearing examiner without additional notice.
Okay, is there anyone here on petition 2022 ZON 066 at 11015 and 11127 East 46th Street? And Keith, any comments?
No additional comments.
Okay, I will continue 2022 ZON 066 to the July 14th hearing, and that's without notice.
Thank you.
We have companions 2022 CZN 813 and CVR 813 at 5917 Massachusetts Avenue, Warren Township, Council District 13.
Ms. Wurtzall, David Kingan again with the offices at 6180 East Market Street here on these two petitions. Only to give you further explanation, there was an automatic continuance filed for these two petitions by Hank Mosley from the Autumn Woods Neighborhood Association, but it was not completed appropriately. And therefore, I followed up with an email yesterday after consultation with Councilor Keith Graves and Mr. Mosley, and all three parties are in agreement with the continuance.
Okay, and that's to the July 14th date?
We have a meeting Monday evening, so we believe we'll be prepared to move forward.
Okay. Is there anyone else here on companion petitions 2022 CZN and CVR 813 at 5917 Massachusetts Avenue? Keith, any comments?
No additional comments.
All right, so I will continue companion petitions 2022 CZN and CVR 813 to the July 14th hearing, and that's without notice, I'm supposed?
Without notice.
Without notice. Okay, great. Thank you.
Next, we have petitions that submitted written requests to be continued to July the 28th, 2022. First is 2022 ZON 060 at 8615, 8640, 8721, 8814, 8816, etc. on South Arlington Avenue, and multiple addresses in the 56, 57, and 6000 block of East County Line Road and 8700 Coombs Road, Franklin Township, Council District 25.
Good afternoon again, Madam Hearing Examiner. Brian Toohey, my address is 50 South Meridian, here representing the petitioner on 2022 ZON 060. We've been working with Kathleen, and they have asked for some additional commitments to our proposed preliminary site plan and some other discussions about screening and landscaping. In order to have time to complete those, I think staff's actually requested the continuance, and we have no objection to the July 28th date. We believe that would be without additional notice.
Okay. Is there anyone else here on 2022 ZON 060, various addresses on South Arlington, East County Line Road, and Combs Road? Okay, and Kathleen, any additional comments?
Thank you, Judy. As Brian indicated, staff requested this so that we can continue with discussions on this.
Okay.
And that would, again, be without notice.
Okay, so I will continue 2022 ZON 060 to the July 28th hearing.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Next, we have 2022 ZON 069 at 3737 East Washington Street, Center Township, Council District 12.
Is there anyone here on that petition, 2022 ZON 069? Okay, Keith, any comments on that?
Yes. Actually, the request should be to January 26, 2023.
It does say that, yes.
The petitioners are seeking to add some additional land to the request, and so they feel it will take this long to make that happen.
Okay, and I'm assuming we would want that with notice since it's going to be that many months?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I am going to continue 2022 ZON 069 to the January 26th, 2023 hearing, and that is with notice.
Next is 2022 CZN 808, CVR 808, and CVC 808 at 1402, 1416, 1432, and 1438 East Washington Street, and 151726 North Arsenal Avenue, Center Township, Council District 17. Mr. Kingan? It's a staff request.
Yes, Ms. Wirtz-Hall, David Kingan with offices at 6180 East Market Street. I was thinking that these petitions were continued by staff, but I think we're in agreement that they need to be continued.
Okay.
And,
and are you aware of any neighbors that might be here?
there might be.
Okay. Is there anyone here on companion petitions 2022 CZN, CVR, and CVC 808, various addresses on East Washington and North Arsenal? Okay. And Keith, any comments?
Yes, staff did seek this continuance to allow time for us to have conversations with the petitioner.
Okay, so I will continue companion petitions 2022 CZN, CVR, and CVC 808 to the July 28th hearing. Is that without notice, Keith?
without notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And 2022 CZN 812 and 2022 CVR 812 at 3602 South Harding Street, Perry Township, Council District 20.
Getting your steps in, Mr. Kingan.
Sorry about that. Again, David Kingan with offices at 6180 East Market Street. We're had some negotiations yesterday with the property owner to the north, and so we do need some more time to work through those. And so we have asked this to be continued to the 7/28 hearing, and that may be with notice. I would like to leave it with or without notice if new notice is needed.
Oh, okay, so there might be an amendment that would require notice, is that what you're saying?
The discussions are adding some land to
Oh,
the
okay. Okay, so do you think that 5 weeks is enough?
I do.
Okay. Is there anyone here on companion petitions 2022 CZN and CVR 812 at 3602 South Harding Street? Okay, and Keith, comments from staff?
Staff is in support of the continuance, and obviously, if land is added to the request, notice will be required.
Okay, so I will continue companion petitions 2022 CZN and CVR 812 to the July 28th hearing with notice if needed.
Thank you.
Next, we have 2022 CAP 827 and 2022 CVR 827 at 8501, 8505, 8509, 8517, and 8609 West Washington Street, Wayne Township, Council District 22.
Thank you, and good afternoon again, Ms. Wertz Hall, Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian, representing the petitioner in this matter. We were able to meet with Councilor Evans and Lisa Bentley from the Gateway Alliance last week. We discussed some changes to the site plan and the modification of commitments. So we're working through that. Clearly, we have a little more work to do with staff as well. So I did notify last week, following meeting with Councilor Evans and Ms. Bentley, that we would be seeking a continuance to the 28th. There's no other remonstrance that we know about, so it probably no notice is necessary.
Okay, and again, do you feel like the 5 weeks is sufficient?
Yeah,
Okay.
We've already tendered one document to Councilor Evans and Ms. Bentley. As soon as they sign off, we'll get it to staff. And the site plan changes we think we can effect pretty quickly. So.
Okay. Is anyone else here for companion petitions 2022 CAP and CVR 827, 8500 through 8600 West Washington Street? Okay, and Genesis, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Wertz Hall. Staff is supportive of the continuance request.
Okay, thank you. So I am going to continue companion petitions 2022 CAP and CVR 827 to the July 28th hearing.
Thank you.
And 2022 CZN 828 and 2022 CPL 828 at 4514 East 79th Street, Washington Township, Council District 3.
And I think this continuance was requested by the counselor, is that correct? Okay, is there anyone else here on companion petitions 2022 CZN and CPL 828 at 4514 East 79th Street? Okay, and Allison, any comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. I did receive a written request from Counselor Daniel Boots to continue this to July 28th. I received it after the time period for an automatic continuance, but the petitioner seems to be okay with the continuance, so just a continuance to the state without notice.
Okay, and Mr. King, unless you have any comments, I will go ahead and grant that. Okay, so I am going to continue companion petitions 2022 CZN and CPL 828 to the July 28th hearing. Is that all of our written? Okay, so I believe that's all of the written continuance requests. I think we might have some other continuance requests or special requests from the audience, please. And when you come up, state your name and address. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Racher. I'm with the firm Plushadley, Racher & Braun. I did actually make a written request, but it was made today. This is concerning the zoning case 2022 ZON 051 and a companion variance 2022 VAR 003. And the basis for the request is I was engaged at the end of May to represent my client, Brian Zeller, and his family, who are immediately adjacent to the subject real estate. And I knew that I would not have time because of a pending trip to begin working on this until approximately June 6th, but I was smart enough to call Joe Caldron and introduce myself and ask if he would consent to a continuance. The long short was Mr. Caldron said that his client would consent to a continuance, but only to today and no further. And I explained that we had consultants. The zoning petition, in our view, implicated a number of complicated issues concerning surface water management, flooding, and ecological impacts, and that we would require more time than June 23. And Mr. Caldron was, as you would expect, very professional, very polite, but made clear that he would not consent to a continuance beyond today. So today we are asking for a continuance for cause. We simply will not be able to demonstrate, we are confident we ultimately can demonstrate that the proposed rezoning and contemplated warehouse will have substantial flooding impacts on my client's property, on other residents in the Lake Bloomfield Estates neighborhood, on the little town of Acton, and other surrounding Franklin Township communities. There are a number of remonstrators here who are in the audience in case you do proceed on the merits. There is significant opposition to this. The Franklin Township Civic League, I understand yesterday, just voted against providing support for this petition. That's the neighborhood association, if you will, for the affected community. So surface water impacts and flooding is a key issue. The ecological impacts are also very important. The proposed warehouse would be located adjacent to Buck Creek. Buck Creek has been designated in the comprehensive plan as a riparian corridor that the county has for years identified as a greenway. And it's
okay, I don't want to get into the merits of the case, but yeah. So let me make sure I understand. Are you only representing Mr. Zeller?
Mr. Zeller and his family, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And so what is the length of your continuance request?
We would ask until July 28th.
Okay. And so what I want to do, would those of you who are here for that petition today please raise your hands? Okay, so there's a big group. Is there any one person speaking on behalf of all of you? I would just like some, obviously, we try to inconvenience as many people as possible. I would like to try to get some idea of where they're coming from. So if anyone would like to speak for the group, you can come forward and give your name and address, please. And then obviously I'm going to hear from Mr. Caldron. Sir, if you could say your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Scott Barmas, 6755 Mimosa Lane. And I represent Bloomfield Lake Estates, the housing addition that's directly affected and borders the Buck Creek right-of-way and the waterway. I am also the neighborhood association president. We as a group have been helping the Zellers and working with the Zellers to represent us and even trying to create a GoFundMe so that we can help support the financial efforts of Mr. Zeller and the attorneys.
Okay.
So if there are any questions that you have, I'd be happy to help answer those.
Yeah,
But there are a litany of reasons. I have lived on the property 52 years.
okay, and again, I don't want to get into the merits. My primary question today is, what is the feeling of the group about continuing the petition, knowing that everybody, took the time to come down here?
100%. We want it continued.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Caldron, comments?
Thank you. We appreciate Mr. Racher's letter and explanation. As I explained to him on the phone when he was engaged several weeks ago, we were willing to provide some additional time, but we also were very firm in our belief that this is a zoning case and not an environmental law case, and that a number of those issues being raised are not necessarily germane to the rezoning request. Furthermore, we had filed this petition back in March. We've been to the Civic League 3 separate times. We were disappointed to learn of their vote, which I received about 12:15 this afternoon. But nevertheless, every time we went to the Civic League, we brought more information that the neighbors had requested regarding flooding. We had our civil engineer there, et cetera, on the past 2 visits to explain everything about drainage, flooding, all the studies that we've undertaken to date. So we're ready. We believe this has been vetted enough to where this can be presented today. But we certainly respect your decision, whichever way it may fall. Because we'll be here on the 28th if that's what you decide is fair.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Can you tell me, so it was continued once?
Once by the Civic League.
Okay.
And then once by our side, which was a shorter continuance, for 2 weeks, so we could go back to the Civic League last Wednesday. So there have been essentially 6 weeks worth of continuances, if you will.
So was the original hearing date May 12th? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, and so it looks like from the staff report, it was continued for a month so that there'd be time for a traffic impact study. Did that coincide with the Civic Leagues?
Yeah, as it turned out, we owed the city the final traffic impact study during that May to June period. We wanted to present that to the Civic League. That got done. Obviously, there were remonstrators that had questions regarding various issues that are raised. That was also accomplished, at least in our mind, and we agreed to one more short continuance just to go back to the Civic League one last time.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you. And this is Keith.
Yes.
Your comments, please.
Staff is prepared to move forward today. As you noted, this is we've had 2 continuances already on this petition. The first one, staff was asking for to allow time for the traffic impact study, but the Neighborhood Association filed an automatic continuance, which took precedent over our request and could not be rescinded. So, but that nuance didn't find its way into the staff report, and I apologize to the hearing examiner for that. But as I said, staff's prepared to move forward today, but we have no objection to a continuance either.
And have you been receiving a lot of email? I know some emails were forwarded to me. Have you been receiving emails, phone calls?
I have received a number of them, yes. Mostly seeking information about the petition or providing remonstrance letters, did not have any or very little correspondence about the continuance.
Okay, all right.
I hate to interrupt. Can I add one more thing,
Sure.
which may or may not impact your decision, but it does relate to this very case. And I was going to have to ask this anyway, but with respect to the variance portion of this case, 2022 VAR 004, I am requesting a waiver of the notice requirement for sign posting. I was a few days late. I was not able to get to the site till the weekend after, so it would be a waiver down from 23 to 18 days. I put the sign up on Sunday, May 23rd, I guess it would be, 22nd, and it should have been up the previous. So just to be transparent about that, so you can factor that in of whatever your decision might be. We got the written notice out on time. It was just the sign posting.
But you said that was only for the variance?
Only for the variance. The sign for the rezoning has been up since April. And of course, it's been way more than 23 days since we put the sign up for the variance to today, but technically it didn't make it for June 12th.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and act on that first. In my opinion, because there was already a notice sign up for the rezoning, and then the written notice to individuals was sent in a timely manner, I'm okay with doing that. But Keith, if you could just weigh in on that request, please.
Staff is in support of the waiver because there was an orange sign out there for a substantial period of time.
Yes.
And the written notices went out in time.
Okay.
So we're comfortable with the waiver for the variance sign.
Okay. So again, this is just for the companion variance petition 2022 VAR 003. The rules of procedure require that a notice sign be posted on the property at least 23 days before the hearing. There was a sign posted specifically for the rezoning, but that the variance was filed later. That sign was posted 5 days late, is that right? But the written notice was sent out in a timely manner. So I am going to grant the waiver of the physical sign notice for the variance petition, reducing that required time from 23 days to 18 days. As far as the continuance request, I certainly am sympathetic to both sides. I appreciate the willingness of the neighbors to be involved. I appreciate Mr. Calderon, understanding he has to represent his client, but he's also open to seeing if there can be any kind of resolution with the neighbors. In my opinion, a case of this magnitude, I think another continuance is in order, particularly since it's only been continued about a month and a half from the original date. So I will say, though, that I am very unlikely to grant any further continuances beyond this. So, and again, I would encourage you to work together and really try to focus on what the zoning issues are. As Mr. Calderon mentioned, there might be some issues that really aren't directly related to the rezoning, but I know when your homes are involved that, that's your environment. So with that, I am going to continue companion petitions 2022 ZON 051 and 2022 VAR 003 to the July 28th hearing. And again, I thank you all for coming down. If you wouldn't mind to try to exit as quietly as possible, I'd really appreciate that. Do we have other requests from the audience, special request?
I can wait a minute.
Whatever you would like to do. Okay.
I'm back.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Tim Oakes. I'm an attorney at Eisman with offices at 1 American Square, Suite 2900, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46282-0200. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of Linden House Indiana Holding LLC, the petitioner in 2022 ZON 037 at 1212 Castagna Drive. We are asking that this matter be moved to the expedited agenda. We've been working with 3 neighborhood groups and about 6 or more surrounding property owners. We have an elaborate set of commitments that we've agreed to, and to our knowledge, we're not aware that anybody else is in opposition, and we ask that it be moved to the expedited agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Is there anyone here on 2022 ZON 037, 1212 Castagna Drive? Mr. Zubak.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Greg Zubak, attorney with offices at 156 East Market Street, here on behalf of a neighbor, Russell Fortune. There have been, I'm not opposed to this going to the expedited. I just wanted to make it known that I am here and interested in this case. Commitments were generated about a week ago that were agreed upon. Commitments were revised a couple of days ago, and then this morning I saw more revisions to the commitments. And so I assume that that's the final set of commitments. I think that's what Mr. Oakes is indicating. I just want the record to be clear on that. My client is okay with the revisions that were made this morning that I saw when I got into my office at 9 o'clock, and I want to make sure that that's what we're talking about now. It is. Very good.
Okay, is there anyone else here on 2022 ZON 037?
Good afternoon. My name's Alan Townsend from Bose McKinney and Evans, 111 Monument Circle. I represent the property owner immediately to the west of this parcel. It's owned by the International School of Indiana. We've been working with Mr. Oakes and his client for quite some time, and we've been working on the commitments you've heard about and would support moving it to the expedited docket.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Townsend. Anyone else here on this petition on Castagna Drive? Okay, and Eddie?
Thank you, Madam Examiner, or Madam Hearing Examiner. Staff is supportive of the request to place this on the expedited agenda. However, as it's been indicated, there have been some moving pieces since the publication of this report. Therefore, staff would like to amend the commitments of which it's making it subject to. First of all, there were commitments submitted via email yesterday. However, they were in kind of a red line form to indicate exactly what had been added to it. So staff is requesting that commitments be refiled for his administrator's approval that outline those exact changes in a final format acceptable by the recorder's office, and that the grant continue to be subject to the development statement that is file dated June 16th, 2022, and that an amended site plan be submitted for administrator's approval that depicts an area of expanded parking area that is contiguous to the surface lot depicted on the site plan file dated June 16th, 2022.
Okay. I also saw, just for the record, an email from Carrie Michael Manders representing Crooked Creek Community Council. He had indicated that he wanted an additional continuance request, and Eddie made very clear to him that he would have to come down and request that, and I don't see anyone here making that request. I'm not ignoring the request, but I feel like there is time, if something needs to be done, there's time for him to appeal a recommendation. So
I spoke to him after he made that request and pointed that out to him as well.
Okay.
He did indicate that his committee would have time to review the addition before the appeal period ends.
Good. So we're all on the same page?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're in agreement with the additional comments of staff.
Okay. So then with that, I am going to move 2022 ZON 037 to the expedited portion of the docket.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, Mr. Denman.
Again, Andre Denman, Park Planner for Indy Parks, here on behalf of case 2022 CAP 831 and 2022 CVR 831. Mrs. Gunn from the Martindale Brightwood Group is here to talk about the reason the continuance can be rescinded. I would just like to add, we have been working with this community since 2012 on plans for this new center for this petition. And again, knowing that this is not a normal process, we would humbly ask to be heard today. If we can do it at the end of, we can move to the end of the docket. I don't think there's anything controversial. I believe staff is supporting the new center. The biggest issue were some sidewalks, which I believe we're all in agreement with, and some other items as well. I know everyone comes before you and says we really need to have this expedited. This would help us. We already have a contractor through the public bid process ready to go, and this would help us move the process to this intended schedule. So I'll let Mrs. Gunn speak. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Jacqueline McMillan Gunn. I am chairperson for Martindale Brightwood Code Compliance and Land Use, and I'm here on behalf of our organization to rescind the continuance that was filed on this case. To replace that, we're going to be asking for commitments to be put in place, and I've sent the planner of record, Keith, a copy of the commitments.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience that wants to speak to 2022 CAP and CVR 831 at 1616 East 25th Street? Okay, and Keith, staff comments, please.
Yes. This is an unusual request to rescind a automatic continuance. I appreciate that Mrs. McMillan Gunn came down here to do that personally. That's the appropriate manner in which it is done. But because an automatic continuance was filed, no staff report was published. And so the public, the petitioner, and of course you, the hearing examiner, have not had the benefit of a staff report. Should you decide to move forward with this, you would need to formally waive the rules, and then, well, you would need to formally waive the rules. Staff believes it would be more appropriate to hear this once a staff report has been published. There would be two options for doing that. One would be to continue this to your July 14th hearing, or to send this directly to the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th, which would be the date that it would have been heard by the MDC anyway. So I believe those two options are more appropriate than hearing it today.
Thank you, Keith, and I think you gave two really good options for that. Yeah, and I agree. I always benefit from the written staff report. Any commitments that were submitted, I don't know if staff has seen those or not, but I'm not comfortable hearing the case today. So I guess, Mr. Denman, I would ask you, do you have a preference for if I would continue this to my next hearing on July 14th, or just send it directly to the Metropolitan Development Commission for their initial hearing on July 20th? As Keith pointed out, that's not going to cause you to lose any time.
I need to look back at my director. Just a second.
Sure.
We'll take it to the MDC. I would ask if I could, on record, I believe I filed a request for early conditional release to be able to pull permits. Could that still be done before the MDC?
That's a matter to take up with our administrator of Metropolitan.
Okay. All right. I can do that. So yes, straight to the MDC. That would be our preferred.
Okay. So I still need to waive the rule to allow the automatic continuance to be withdrawn.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So two pieces to this. I am going to waive the rules of procedure to allow the automatic continuance that was filed for 2022 CAP and CVR 831 to be rescinded as per the request of Ms. McMillan Gunn from the neighborhood group. And then I am going to refer companion petitions 2022 CAP and CVR 831 directly to the Metropolitan Development Commission for its hearing on July 20th. And Keith, do you think that needs to be with notice?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Hello.
Hello, my name is Itbarak Michael. I'm here on the petition number 2022 CZN 823 and then 2022 CVR 823. I'm here to request $380, the unused portion refund for this petition. It's a withdrawn petition, so I'm.
What's the case number again?
2022 CZN 823 and then 2022 CVR.
Could you read off your address? It's off your notice there.
Oh, about from here?
Yes. This information.
Okay. 2022 CZN 823.
Speaking to this as much as you can.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
2022 CZN 823 and the address is 1428 West Epler Avenue, and then the other one is 5449 South Harding Street. And then and the other one is 2022 CZN 823 and 2022 CVR 823. One is for variance and one is for zoning.
Okay, so it's companion petitions 2022 CZN and CVR 823 at 1428 West Epler and 5449 South Harding. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And when were those? Were those yours, Keith?
Yes, that was my case. This petition was withdrawn some time ago. I was not aware that he was coming down today, and so I'm trying to recollect this as best I can. It was withdrawn, and no mention was made at that hearing of a refund. I believe there was a miscommunication among myself, the property owner and the property owner's representative as to how to make that happen. And we did have a call later on when I suggested that he should come back to a hearing to make that request in person.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't realize he was coming today, so I'm not prepared with a number.
Okay.
But I believe that there is an appropriate amount. I just don't know what that is today.
Okay. So are you comfortable if I would approve it subject to an amount that is determined by you?
As determined by our administrator.
Administrator. Okay. All right. So sir, since Keith doesn't have the exact figure here, what he will do is go back to his notes and figure out what that amount is. I can go ahead and approve it subject to the amount determined by him. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay. So for 2022 CZN and CVR 823 at 1428 West Epler and 5449 South Harding, I am going to grant, and those petitions were withdrawn, I'm going to grant a refund in an appropriate amount to be determined by the administrator.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there other requests from the audience? Hello.
Hello. Yes, I'm Thomas Graham. I've got a special request for 3415 North Sherman.
Is that on the docket?
Yes. It's for a one-day waiver for the signage.
I see it.
the notice of public notice.
Okay, so this is for 2022 ZZN 073,
Yes,
and you said it's a one-day waiver for both the written and the posted
yes.
notice? Okay. Is there anyone here on 2022 ZON 073 at 3415 North Sherman Drive? Okay, Genesis, do you have comments on that?
Thank you, Ms. Wurtzhall. Staff is supportive of the request.
Okay, so I will grant the one-day waiver of notice, both posted and mailed, for 2022 ZON 073.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham, did you state your name and address, just for the record?
Thomas Graham, 2317 North LaSalle Street.
Thank you.
Indianapolis, Indiana. Thank you.
Any other requests from the audience? Okay, staff special requests. Okay, so it looks like we have 3 petitions that are actually going to have public hearing. Is that right? Okay. Okay. We will now consider the petitions on the expedited portion of the docket. These are petitions where staff has recommended approval of the request and staff has not been made aware of any opposition to the petitions. If there are remonstrators present for a particular petition or members of the public object to the petition being recommended for approval or being approved, we will hear testimony before making a decision. Nancy, would you please read into the record all petitions to be expedited?
Yes, thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Petitions scheduled to be expedited are 2022 ZON 031 amended at 373 North Holmes Avenue, Wayne Township Council District 11. 2022 ZON 037 at 1212 Castania Drive, Washington Township Council District 7. 2022 ZON 067 at 3100 North Meridian Street, Center Township Council District 9. 2022 ZON 068 at 1435 South Mickley Avenue, Wayne Township Council District 22. 2022 ZON 070 at 3108 East Michigan Street, Center Township Council District 12. 2022 ZON 073 at 3415 North Sherman Drive, Center Township Council District 9. Companions 2021 CZN 858 and CAP 858 amended at 5380 and 5390 Rockville Road, Wayne Township Council District 15. 2022 CZN 829 and 2022 CVR 829 at 921 Virginia Avenue, Center Township Council District 16, and companions 2022 CZN, CVR, and CAP 830 at 7320 East Hannah Avenue, Franklin Township Council District 18.
Thank you, Nancy. If everyone who is representing the petitions just called could please stand up and be sworn in together, and then we'll just call the expedited petitions one at a time.
Everybody who's representing a petition, I'm going to need to swear you in. Please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do. Thank you.
Okay, the petition at 373 North Holmes, 2022 ZON 031. Hello, Mr. Gilman.
Hello, good afternoon. Nancy, Dave Gilman, office at 211 South Ritter Avenue, Suite H, Indianapolis 46219, representing the petition at 373 North Holmes Avenue. We're in agreement with all the staff recommendations and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and again, if you have your phones on, please turn them off. Okay, if you have your watch on, please turn it off. Jeff, any additional comments?
Thank you, Ms. Wurtzhall. Staff has no additional comments. We are recommending approval of this amended request.
Okay, so I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 031 amended, and that will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me read. 2022 ZON 037 at 1212 Castagna Drive.
Again, good afternoon. For the record, Tim Oakes, Attorney Ice Miller, offices at 1 American Square, Suite 2900, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46282-0200. Here this afternoon on behalf of the petitioner in 2022 ZON 037. We are in agreement with the staff report, including the 3 additional requests that were made during the request to move to the expedited agenda, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oakes. And Eddie, would you mind putting into the record again those 3 points?
Absolutely. So in regard to the commitments, commitments be filed for administrator's approval that reflect those changes indicated on the red line changes. Commitment form submitted on June 22nd, 2022. And that the grant be subject to the development statement file dated June 16th, 2022, and that an amended site plan be submitted for administrator's approval that depicts the area of expanded parking that is contiguous to the surface lot as depicted on the site plan originally filed on June 16th, 2022.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody that worked together on this. I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 037, subject to those 3 additional points listed by staff. That will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2022 ZON 067 at 3100 North Meridian Street, Center Township, Council District 9.
Ms. Wurtzhall, David Kingen with offices at 6180 East Market Street. Here representing Heron Classical Schools on this rezoning request, and we would ask your favorable consideration.
All right, thank you. And Kathleen, any additional comments?
Thank you, Judy. Staff has no further comments on this.
I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 067. It will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th. Thank you.
Next is 2022 ZON 068 at 1435 South Mickley Avenue, Wayne Township, Council District 22.
Hi. My name's Roger Kessler with offices at 10200 Lantern Road, Fishers, Indiana. I'm here representing Seeds of Hope, Inc. in the rezone 2022 ZON 068. And we agree with staff report and would ask for a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Keith, any additional comments?
No additional comments.
All right, I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 068. That will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th. Thank you.
Next we have 2022 ZON 070 at 3108 East Michigan Street, Center Township, Council District 12.
Good afternoon, Joe Smoker, 960 North Rural Street, Indianapolis 46201. Here on behalf of that petition, we're in agreement with staff, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smoker. And Kathleen, any additional comments?
Thank you, Judy. Staff has no further comments.
Okay, I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 070. That will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Petition 2022 ZON 073 at 3415 North Sherman Drive, Center Township, Council District 9.
Hello, good afternoon. This is a rezone. I want to take it from a C4 commercial to a D5 residential.
Okay, and Mr. Graham, do you agree with the commitment requested by staff that the off-street parking be accessed from the existing west-east alley at the south line of the property?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Genesis, any additional comments?
No additional comments, thank you.
Okay. So subject to that commitment being put in final format, I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 073 that will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
July 20th. Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you.
Petitions 2021 CZN and CAP 858 amended at 5380 and 5390 Rockville Road, Wayne Township, Council District 15.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wertz Hall. Joe Calderon representing the petitioner in these companion petitions. We agree, obviously, with the staff report, and we thank them for being so patient with us. We would note that I believe we had tendered more updated landscaping and elevation plans last week, probably after Kathleen had written her report. So whatever the latest date was, which I think it was the 16th maybe, versus the 2 dates in the staff report that are shown.
So which?
So the documents filed dated April 26th and June 10th, I think, were superseded by updated elevation and landscaping plans dated June 16th.
Okay, so they should both be June 16th?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Or just, I guess we could just say.
Yeah, the latest, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, thank you. And Kathleen?
Thank you, Judy. Again, staff would like to thank Mr. Calderon. Again, this was drawn out, I think, on both of our sides, and so appreciate his patience with staff. And yes, those were updated after the staff report was submitted. So if you could make it subject to those, the site plan and the elevations file dated June 16th, that would be fantastic.
All right. So subject to the site plans, landscape plan, and building elevations file dated June 16th, I am going to recommend approval of companion petitions 2021 CZN and CAP 858. They will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have 2022 CZN 829 and 2022 CVR 829 at 921 Virginia Avenue, Center Township, Council District 16.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wertz Hall. Misha Rabinowitz, offices at 1 Indiana Square, represent the petitioner in this matter. We're in agreement with staff's recommendation and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Kathleen, Jeff, any comments?
Thank you, Ms. Wertz Hall. Staff has no additional comments.
Okay, so I am going to recommend approval of 2022 CZN 829, and I am going to grant 2022 CVR 829 subject to the findings of fact. Those will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, under the petitions to be expedited is 2022 CZN 830, 2022 CVR 830, and 2022 CAP 830, 7320 East Hannah Avenue, Franklin Township, Council District 18.
Thank you. Good afternoon. One last time. Ms. Wertz Hall, Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian, Indianapolis, representing the petitioner M.I. Homes in connection with these companion petitions. This is adding 5 acres to a series of approvals that were approved early this year. The 5-acre piece came in later. We're seeking the exact same treatment from a zoning perspective and amending all the commitments, including the commitment that staff has put in its staff report. So we agree with that commitment in the staff report today, and appreciate your recommendation.
All right, thank you. And Kathleen, additional comments?
Thank you, Judy. Staff has no further comments.
All right, so subject to the commitment requested in the written staff report, and subject to the findings of fact, I am going to recommend approval of companion petitions 2022 CZN, CVR, and CAP 830, and those will all be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will now hear the petitions that are on the petitions scheduled for public hearing. They will be called in order, and then just as a reminder, petitioners have 15 minutes, remonstrators have 15 minutes, staff will give their recommendation, and then each side has 5 minutes for rebuttal. So Nancy, if you would call the first petition, please.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Hearing Examiner. First, we have companions 2022 CZN 818 and 2022 CVR 818 amended at 1105 and 1107 English Avenue, approximate addresses Center Township Council District 17, LP2 LLC by Luke Burrow, requesting a rezoning of 0.11 acre from the C5 district to the D8 district. Also requesting a variance of development standards of the Consolidated Zoning and Subdivision Ordinance to provide for a 6-unit small apartment building with a 7.5-foot front setback, 10 feet required, a floor area ratio of 1.24, no more than 0.60 permitted, a livability space ratio of 0.36, 0.66 required, and 3 off-street parking spaces, 6 required. Will all those intending to testify this afternoon, either for or against this petition, please stand now to identify yourselves. Do we have any remonstrators present? Doesn't look like it. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
My name is Luke Burrow, address 748 Shelby Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46203. I'm here today to propose the redevelopment of 1105 and 1107 English Avenue. The property is currently vacant and has a zoning classification of C5. Rezoning the subject property to the D8 zoning classification would result in the ability to develop a 2-story, 6-unit apartment building. This development aims to help fill a void identified within the rental market of Indianapolis. The proposed development with small apartments is consistent with the comprehensive plan's recommendation for the traditional neighborhood typology as described in the Marion County Pattern Book. There are no overlay districts within this development. Existing infrastructure provides adequate water, sanitary sewer, and drainage needs. This information has been double-checked with Citizens Energy Group, as well as the sidewalks along the frontage of this development are to remain intact throughout construction. With single-family housing to the east and north, and then further to the east, townhomes, the proposed development promotes a healthy mix of housing types along the 1100 and 1200 blocks of English Avenue. The proposed development is not to exceed 1.5 times of the adjacent primary structure as recommended in the Pattern Book, specifically the existing residential development to the east. Given this development has a density greater than 15 units per acre, exterior characteristics were specifically designed to have compatible design elements to other new construction, single-family, and townhomes in the immediate vicinity. This density intensification is also located within a half-mile of the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, the existing red line, and the proposed blue line. Furthermore, the development is within walking distance of a number of Indianapolis parks. Being in a predominantly platted single-family neighborhood, the proposed development is oriented towards the street, with a pedestrian connection from the front doors and is similar in site layout and building orientation to the surrounding development. Proposed green space directly adjacent to and in rear of the proposed development promotes the social connectivity of the neighborhood with clearly defined public, semi-public, and private spaces. This development includes a 2-story multifamily structure with a finished basement. There are 6 units in total, each unit to have 2 bedroom and 2 bathroom, ranging from 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. Common front door shall be oriented towards English Avenue with individual doors for each unit located inside the building. 3 parking stalls as well as space for 6 bike racks are proposed in the rear of the lot off of the alley. According to Chapter 744, Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph B, Number 2 of the current zoning code, no off-street parking is required for any parcel containing less than 5,000 square feet of lot area, except for single-family attached dwellings or single-family detached dwellings. This parcel has 5,000.25 square feet, so we are 1/4 square foot too large for that exception. Given the lot size of 5,000.25 square feet, we still retain an open space of 58% with a building footprint of 2,078 feet. Given these circumstances, I am today seeking a favorable recommendation not only for the rezone, but also for the variance of development standards. Thank you for your time, and I'd be more than willing to answer any questions.
Mr. Burrow, I have a couple questions. Were you contacted by any neighbors or neighborhood groups?
We were contacted by the Fountain Square Land Use Association. We made a presentation at their meeting on June 14th, and they decided to remain neutral on the subject.
Okay, thank you. And you said it was the Fountain Square
Land Use
Committee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I don't believe anyone else wishes to speak on your behalf, is that correct?
No, that's correct, yes.
Okay, and anyone else want to speak in favor of this petition? Okay, anyone else want to speak in opposition? Okay. Keith, your staff report, please.
Yes. As you know from reading the staff report, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning petition. These lots were originally platted as single-family lots, have been used as single-family lots for much, if not all of their history, until recently when demolition of the home on the east lot occurred. So we believe it's appropriate for it to be rezoned in reflection of its use, which would be to the D8. There are also 4 development standards variances here today being requested. One is for front yard setback to 7.5 feet when 10 feet is required. There is one other dwelling that's sort of that's adjacent to this, and then you get to a school, so there's not another dwelling for quite some distance. So the dwelling that's there is the one that we use to compare this one to. Its setback appears to be approximately 7 feet. So 7.5 feet for the proposed one we believe is appropriate. It's the other 3 requests that staff has some concern about. One is for floor area ratio, which is a measurement of how much floor area there are. So you would look at all 3 floors and compare that to the size of the lot. Then there's livability space, where you look at the outdoor area minus the footprint of the building minus the vehicular area, and that gives you a sense of how much of the site is available for outdoor use. And then there's the number of parking spaces, where 1 parking space is required for each unit. In this case, there are 6 units, so there would be 6 parking spaces, and 3 are being provided. Would note that there would be space in front of the building for 2 more parking spaces on street rather than off street as required. And then there's still 1 apartment that would go without a parking space. We believe that these 3 variances go to show that the site is being overdeveloped. The livability space ratio is half what the ordinance requires. The floor area ratio is double what the ordinance requires. I do want to commend the petitioner. When this was originally filed, it was for 9 units. He has brought it down to 6. We believe that's a step in the right direction, and appreciate that. However, we don't feel like it's gone far enough, that this site is still, we're still trying to put too much building on too small of a site. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Keith. Were you contacted by any neighbors or neighborhood groups?
Yes, I heard from the abutting neighbor to the east. It was a request for information and did not indicate either support or remonstrance.
Okay.
Did also hear from the Fountain Square land use group, and again, asking for information and asking for explanation of the ordinance. But they did not express either support or remonstrance, and I did not hear what their final conclusion was.
Keith, I know this is a hard question, but did staff have any discussion about how many units might be acceptable?
I think that there are 2 things going on here. One is the number of units, and probably we'd be comfortable with 3 units, maybe 4. I would have to take that back to the rest of the staff. But the other portion of it is the size of the building in comparison to the lot.
Right.
Now, this proposed building, we've not seen an elevation of it, but it's my understanding from my conversations with Mr. Burrow that it's essentially a 2.5-story, where the first floor is half in the ground and half out of the ground with 2 units above it, which does make the bulk of it seem a little bit less visually, but it's still looking to put a lot of building on what essentially is one lot that was originally intended for a single-family home and just a portion of a second lot.
Okay. All right, that's very helpful. And Mr. Burrow, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Yeah, so thank you. First, I'd like to address, whenever we first submitted the petition, we did provide elevations of the drawing. Once the petition was adjusted, we did not make those adjustments on the elevation, so that's why we did not provide elevations for the current proposal. And I did want to point out that those elevations on the original submittal do have a residential feel and are consistent with the neighboring properties that are being constructed on the north side of English Avenue. In regards to the floor area ratio and livability space ratio, I understand those measurements, and I point out the measurement of the open space ratio being 58%, which is 3% larger than the requirement in the D8 district. And I also am a little concerned on the concern from staff. So from my understanding, the livability space ratio and the floor area ratio really only play into factor whenever we increase the number of units in a building, not necessarily the size of the building. As it's been said even today, if it was 3 units, they probably would recommend approval. but because it's 6 units, we recommend denial. So those figures that we're pointing to as reasons for denial, it's almost like a pick and choose on when we pay attention to those figures and when we don't. So I feel like with the open space ratio being 58% and the floor area ratio being comparable to what a single family house would be developed as on a more traditional lot, then I feel like those two figures are proportionately correct for this lot.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow that. I mean, there are two issues: number of units, which obviously that relates to the parking, but then there's also the lot. I mean, the size of the building itself. Keith, do you have any follow-up?
Well, I think that the ordinance does treat single-family and two-family structures differently. Well, I don't think it is, that they treat single-family and two-family structures differently than apartment structures. Both type of structures are permitted in the D8, but the standards are different, and that's because when deciding how much development is an appropriate amount of development on a site, you kind of have to look at the combination of the two things together, the number of units and the size of the building. And that's probably the best that I can respond to that.
Okay. And Mr. Burrow, shall I assume that that you want me to consider the petitions together as opposed to following the staff recommendation for the individual petitions?
If we recommended or assess them separately, they would receive two different recommendations following this. I mean, you would recommend petitions separately? Is
Yes.
that what I'm following?
Yes. So what I'm thinking is, I agree that the zoning classification requested is appropriate, but I'm not comfortable with the variance. But I don't know if you want me to, recommend separately or just as a package.
Separately is okay.
Okay. All right. So yeah, and I understand where you're coming from, but I agree with staff on this. It seems like you're trying to put a little too much on this lot, and so I would encourage you to see, if you can rework some things between now and the commission hearing. So I am going to recommend approval of 2022 CZN 818, but I'm going to recommend denial of 2022 CVR 818. And those will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we could take a 5-minute break before the next petition, I'd appreciate it.
I don't want to rush you.
Did you already, did he give it to you? Did you give it to Eddie already? Did you give your little?
Yes, Eddie has.
Okay, that's all. I want to make sure.
All right, thank you.
All set?
Thank
I'm
you.
set.
Yes. Let
Great.
me read the petition. 2022 ZN 821, 2022 CVR 821, 2022 CVC 821, and 2022 CPL 821 amended at 6548, 6552, and 6556 Cornell Avenue and 6535 Ferguson Street, approximate addresses, Washington Township, Council District 2. Petitioners is BRHQ Real Estate LLC by Michael Ravinovich, requesting a rezoning of 0.80 acre from the MU2 TOD and D4 TOD districts to the MU2 TOD district. Also requesting a variance of use and development standards of the Consolidated Zoning and Subdivision Ordinance to provide for a medium mixed-use building not permitted on pedestrian frontage type, a surface parking lot along Ferguson Street with 2-foot setback, not permitted, minimum 50-foot setback required, with 49 parking spaces, 75 parking spaces required. Also requesting a vacation of the first alley east of Ferguson Street, being 10 feet in width, from the northeast corner of Lot 5 in Purcell's Broad Ripple Addition, recorded in Plat Book 13, page 43, in the Office of the Recorder of Marion County, Indiana, south a distance of 64.05 feet. Also requesting approval of a subdivision plat to be known as Avenues Broad Ripple Addition, combining 0.786 acre into one lot. Will all those intending to testify on this petition this afternoon, either for or against, anyone who might be speaking, please let me swear you in now. Are there any remonstrators here? Okay, yes. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wertz Hall, Misha Rabinovich, offices at 1 Indiana Square, Suite 1800. With this petition, Avenue Development, through its affiliate BRHQ Real Estate, seeks approvals necessary to permit redevelopment of 3 parcels that are in the 6500 block of Cornell Avenue and 1 adjacent parcel on Ferguson Street in Broad Ripple Village for a mixed-use building that would include a first-floor restaurant operated by the family that operates a longtime Broad Ripple icon Ambrosia restaurant, and then essentially 3.5 stories of office that would be anchored by Avenue Development for its headquarters. Avenue is represented here today by Mike Mattingly and other representatives of the development team. You may be familiar with Avenue's current project, which is the community center at Broad Ripple Park that's currently under construction. Avenue is a nationwide developer that focuses primarily on health care, but they've chosen to focus on Broad Ripple to relocate their headquarters. They're currently located at Keystone at the Crossing to the building that's being proposed here. They would occupy about 20 to 30% of the proposed building, and then other smaller office tenants would operate the remainder of the building. Ultimately, this project will bring much-needed jobs and daytime workers to Broad Ripple. Daytime office workers that the retail community in Broad Ripple deeply needs and desires. We come here today with the support of the Broad Ripple Village Association, many area neighboring property owners and businesses. Those folks are identified in the map and the letters that are in your materials at tab 6. And the planning staff's recommendation of approval, with one exception, and that's the planning staff does not support the proposed parking lot fronting Ferguson because the transit-oriented development overlay discourages surface parking. And while we understand that staff has taken this policy stance, and we've certainly seen that in other cases, we feel strongly that in this case, based upon significant changes and revisions that have been made to the building to address staff's concerns regarding the context of the structure, the configuration of the parking lot, additional landscaping, And really, given the quality of the development and the need for office workers in Broad Ripple, approval of the variance as well as the alley vacation and plat are appropriate. The aerial on the screen just sort of orients you. I know you're very familiar with Broad Ripple and this area. Again, there are 4 parcels. There's 3 that front Ferguson and 1 that fronts Cornell, and of course, significantly, the Monon Trail is to the east, on the east side of Cornell. One of the parcels is already zoned MU2. We're seeking to consolidate the zoning for all 4 parcels to the MU2, which is really consistent with what else is happening in that area. The other variances are to permit the medium mixed-use building type, to permit parking with 51 parking spaces. That's a bit of an upward adjustment than what was read in the notice. 51 parking spaces where 75 are required. And then the surface parking lot along Ferguson. Another feature of the site that I wanted to mention is the alley. It's an unimproved, overgrown, grassy, unused alley. We are proposing to vacate that portion that abuts the sites in our project. We have agreed with the Broad Ripple Village Association to reserve in favor of DPW should they want to improve the alley, a transportation easement, and would put those in the commitments that we are putting before you. In terms of the analysis of the comprehensive plans that apply to the site, it's really a convergence of the Envision Broad Ripple plan and the transit-oriented development plan. And those were studied closely. The Envision Broad Ripple plan calls for village mixed use, which provides for, among other things, office and restaurant use that are being proposed. And I think the other significant thing about the Envision Broad Ripple plan is the frontage requirement on Cornell, which is 40 feet in height. And we'll go through the elevations, but careful consideration of that massing element has been taken with this project. And then, of course, the other plan is the transit-oriented development plan, which encourages increased density in areas that are within 1/4 mile of a transit stop. In this case, of course, that's 66th and College, which is just 2 blocks away. And then the other underlying principle with respect to transit-oriented development is that presumably alternative modes of transportation beyond the bus line will be used, including, really importantly in this case, because of the close proximity of the building to the Monon Trail, at least some of the people that work in this building or go to the restaurant will also live in Broad Ripple and will not be driving cars. So it's these guidelines structure that sort of provided the framework for development of the site plan and the building elevations that we're going to show you. So moving to the site plan, which is on the screen, it's also Ms. Wirtz Hall at tab 2, a little easier to see. We've blown it up a bit because I know that's hard to read. So the petitioner is proposing one building that would front Cornell. It is first floor restaurant with podium parking on the west side of the building at the first floor, and then essentially 3.5 floors of office. And the 4th floor of the office is set back about 47 feet from the front of the building. So the height of the building along Cornell is just at 40 feet. Other significant pieces of the site plan: there's an outdoor patio to bring pedestrian engagement. Entrance to the parking garage is off of Cornell, one way in going west, and then one way out onto Ferguson. A significant revision to the plan was made so that all traffic coming out of the parking lot will go south on Ferguson. That's a one-way south. There are 47 on-site parking spaces between the lot and the podium, and then there are 4 additional parking spaces that are in front of the building that count towards the ordinance to make a total of 51 parking spaces. And then again, on Cornell, as you know, there are about 15 back-in angled spaces that are on the east side of Cornell that, although they don't count towards the parking requirement, they are adjacent, under the ordinance, they are adjacent to the development site. The petitioner has also arranged for a parking agreement with Veritas Realty, which is located 2 blocks south, for between 10 to 15 additional spaces to be used in the evening should it become necessary. This would be particularly convenient, for example, for restaurant employees that may need a place to park. I want to talk more specifically about the parking lot on Ferguson. Obviously, this is the only aspect of the petition that staff opposes. And we do understand the policy reasons why, but as a practical matter, in order to bring the kind of daytime office workers that Broad Ripple so desperately needs, additional parking is required. In fact, the primary concern that we've heard from neighbors, including, I think you'll hear this in a bit, is the amount of available parking. And so there's this compromise that really has to happen between the interest of the transit-oriented development overlay and bringing density and reducing surface parking, with providing adequate parking so that you can have the type of office density in Broad Ripple. The development teams really worked very hard to address the concerns that staff had with the parking lot. We talked with the city architect, of course with Kathleen and others. The parking lot has been developed with permeable pavers. Again, the exit's been configured one-way south. There's public art opportunity on the southwest corner of the lot, and we've increased the landscaping around the perimeter of the lot. Getting to the building, and the renderings in full size are in your materials. They're a little bit easier to see. And again, as I've said a couple of times, we have made significant changes to the building based upon the initial feedback that we received from staff, and I think staff is now recommending approval of the building, is supportive of the massing. Changes that occurred were to push that 4th floor back, again, 1 full additional structural bay, so that at the Cornell level to the top of the 3rd floor, it's about 40 feet. And the other thing that was done was to change up the materials to stop the brick at the 3rd floor, to give it really 3-floor scale. Also, the corners were pushed back to bring some adjustment to the residential to the north. There were balconies that were added, and that 3-floor feel was really brought around to the rear of the building, or the Ferguson Street side, with a material change that really brings the scale down to a scale of 3 floors. The materials are primarily brick masonry with some hardy board material to bring some transition, with some mesh and lots of transparency balconies to really make it fit in context. We wanted to talk a bit about the support for the project, again at tab 6. In addition to the support of the Broad Ripple Village Association, after having attended 3 of their land use committee meetings and having, I can't emphasize this enough, really tried to compromise by making significant changes, reducing that fourth floor, moving it back, changes to the massing, adjustments to the parking lot, have achieved the BRVA support. And this map here at tab 6 and the letters behind it show you the kind of support that the project has. And this is not only residents, this is businesses who see the value in bringing daytime workers that can frequent restaurants and retail businesses that really need help. I mentioned the 4 commitments that the BRVA had requested, all of which the petitioner has agreed to. They include further exploration of ways to adjust the massing on the northeast and southeast corners. We agreed to take a further look at that, reserving the transportation easement in favor of DPW so that should that alley need to be used, it could be, to make best efforts to preserve the mature trees along Cornell, which is really important to everyone. And we believe there's a likelihood that that can occur. And then the 4th commitment is the BRVA, in case sidewalk improvements go in on the Ferguson side, that the developer would commit to constructing those. So with that, we would ask your positive recommendation to the MDC. We, of course, would expect to include in the approval the commitments that the BRVA has requested, and the recommendation would include staff's positive motion to approve the vacation, including the assessment of benefits and approval of the plat, and those motions are in the staff report. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rubinovich. And how many meetings did you say you had with BRVA?
3.
Or did you say?
3. I did. Yeah.
Okay. Did you meet with anybody outside of those meetings?
Yeah, I think we met with lots of people. Mr. Mattingly is probably best to speak about that.
Yeah, and if you could just kind of summarize.
Sure.
How many meetings you had, who you met with?
Yep, Mike Mattingly, co-founder, principal, Avenue Development, 8435 Keystone Crossing. Again, as Misha had mentioned, with our history and recent experience in Broad Ripple Park and all the years that took, we've met with every one of our surrounding neighbors, and not just in kind of their support, but also in talking to them about some of their thoughts and concerns and how we could address certain, to Misha's points, massing, of course, was a large part of one of those. And then in addition, trying to also obtain other parking agreements and so that we could help bring those to the BRVA as well. So
Okay.
probably 50 people.
Okay, great, thank you. Did anyone else want to speak on your behalf? I think our time was up.
I think we're out of time, and so we're complete.
All right, thank you. Remonstrators. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Denny Oaklack, 930 East 66th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'm the owner of the property at 930 East 66th Street, which is basically 3 properties about 50 yards north of the proposed project. And I submitted written comments before the scheduled May 26th hearing, and I just wanted to confirm that you received those. Okay. So I'm happy to go through those or to answer any questions that you might have.
And if, just to have a copy here. And so you would be on the north side of 66th between Ferguson and Cornell, is that right?
That's correct. At
Okay.
the corner of 66th and Cornell.
Okay. Did you want to summarize the content of your letter for the record?
Yes, I'll be
Okay.
happy to do that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so several concerns that I have. I've owned this property for about 6 years. We have about 3,500 square feet in our property. It's a commercial property. I have my office there and some tenants. We have about 13 people in, if everyone was in that day. And we actually have trouble finding parking because we only have street parking. Most of that parking with the angle lots that were mentioned are full. As a matter of fact, I went in this morning and there was no street parking around my building, and I did get the last spot in that angle parking north of 65th Street. So I think that clearly there's more required parking with the transit overlay. They do not meet those requirements, and personally I would say I'm not sure that's even enough for the parking for 80 to 100 employees. So I guess the main point that I have is I just don't think that this project, the parking can support this project in that location. The other things I pointed out are some traffic issues. If you're driving on Cornell Street, 2 cars really can't pass each other together. You have to kind of pull over to the side to let one pass, and I think this is just going to add some major traffic issues on Cornell. And really the only way to get to this from the east side of the project is to cross over 65th Street from Westfield and then turn north to the project. That intersection is, in my opinion, very dangerous because you have to cross over the Monon Trail and then stop at Cornell to access this property. And then my final point would be, it certainly doesn't seem to me that the envisioned Broad Ripple plan anticipates this kind of use north of 65th Street, which they refer to as a neighborhood village district. If you look through that on Appendix F of that envisioned Broad Ripple plan, it talks about inappropriate uses in this neighborhood village district, are uses that generate mostly vehicular traffic, uses that require a lot of parking, and uses that create conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. So those are my comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And again, there is an email from Mr. Oklak dated May 26th, and he summarized those points nicely. Anyone else want to speak in opposition? Okay, I did receive 2 additional emails of the opposition, and just for the record, one was from Tom McNulty, the president of McNulty Real Estate Services. And just to summarize his comments, he owns a real estate company that's located at 66th and Cornell, and his main points of concern are parking. And that's generally his main concern with the project. I also had an email from Clark Kahlo that was sent on May 25th. And his main points of concern are how this project matches up or maybe does not match up with Envision Broad Ripple Plan and the transit-oriented development overlay. Suggesting that this might be more appropriately located along a commercial corridor rather than along these particular streets. And then there's some concern with the location of this within an environmentally sensitive area and floodway fringe. So I did review those emails as well. And Kathleen, if you would like to give the staff comments, please.
Thank you, Judy. As has been noted, when the staff report was first published, it was recommendation of denial of all the requests. And because of the work and the coordination that's been taken place between the petitioner and the city architect, staff is now recommending approval of the rezoning to the MU2, but it would be subject to those amended elevations that are filed dated June 15th. Staff, however, just wants to clarify, staff is recommending denial of the parking along Ferguson Street, as well as the vacation and the subdivision plat, because the vacation and the subdivision plat is inextricably connected to that parking lot. In order to get to the parking lot, you have to cross the alley vacation, the proposed alley vacation, and in order to develop this property as a whole, the subdivision plat would have to include the parking lot. And because, again, staff is recommending denial of the parking lot, consequently, both the vacation and the subdivision follows that denial. Staff was concerned initially with the MU2 and particularly the massing of the building, but through coordination with the city architect, those changes have been made and staff is now supportive of that. Staff would note that in Mr. Kahlo's email that's noted that there are two overlays. There's the transit-oriented development overlay, which is, and staff will make a few more comments about that, as well as it lies within that floodway fringe of White River. So staff, again, is concerned about that. Getting back to the variance and the parking lot, staff and the transit-oriented development, the one that was just recently adopted, does prohibit parking lots. When they are prohibited, when they are permitted, then they have certain standards to meet, which, as you will note from the staff report, that's a 50-foot setback. And here they're asking for a 2-foot setback. Staff believes that's just too much of a differential between those two to support it. Staff is also concerned about what we see as a beginning of a trend in Broad Ripple, and that is converting small residential lots into small parking lots that cannot meet the development standards. Those development standards are in place to provide a buffering from the activities of a parking lot from those adjacent land uses. And because of the reduction of all those development standards, a parking lot next to, for example, a single-family dwelling or a single-family dwelling that's been converted commercially, and we see those frequently in Broad Ripple, it really makes a negative, it impacts those adjacent property owners in a negative way. Staff also believes that a parking lot is, once it's a parking lot, it's always going to remain a parking lot, and staff does not believe that that is the highest and best use of land, particularly in Broad Ripple. Going on to the vacation, again, as staff mentioned, the vacation of that alley is connected to that parking lot. And what staff believes is that it isn't really in the interest of the public, which is the findings that is required for a vacation, but it serves the needs of private development. So staff is recommending denial of the vacation. On page 187, there are two recommended motions. One is for approval and one is for denial. And then following that, there's a recommended motion related to the assessment of benefits. And then getting to the plat, again, it does meet those criteria of the plat, but again, we're talking about combining this parking lot on Ferguson with the lots, 3 lots on Cornell, in order to make this development function appropriately. And again, staff does not feel that supporting the plat would be appropriate. I know you asked about hearing from other people, from remonstrators. I did receive a call from a woman that owns a business on Ferguson nearby and was concerned again about parking. Heard about that, and as you noted in the letters that we have received, or the city has received, parking is an issue. What's happening again in Broad Ripple is it's developing, and there's into commercial activities, and there's really not the infrastructure there to support it, and that talks about, again, it relates to that parking. There was a song that was released in 1970. It was written and made popular by Joni Mitchell, and it was called "The Big Yellow Taxi." And staff would just like to comment about some of the lyrics related to that. And it goes like this: "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? You pave paradise and put up a parking lot. You pave paradise and put up a parking lot." Again, staff is very concerned about what we're seeing as a trend in Broad Ripple of taking these small residential lots, converting them to parking lots. And with that, staff would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Kathleen, I don't think I've ever heard staff quote Joni Mitchell, but I like it. I think it would have been more effective if you would sing it, but...
Oh, I'm not going to
subject
you to that.
I do not mean to make light of this situation. I live very close to Broad Ripple, and obviously I'm concerned about what goes on anywhere in Marion County, but I am very familiar with the neighborhood, and again, I'm not trying to make light of the situation. Mr. Rabinovich, if you could, in your rebuttal, talk a little bit, or actually before you even begin your rebuttal, can you talk about why there aren't more spaces that are proposed for the garage? Or either, yeah. Mike, Mr. Mandley, that'd be great.
Yep, Mike Mattingly again. Physically, we're not capable to park more cars inside of that podium structure. One being we don't own the lots to the north of us or the south. We tried to obtain the one to the north, and the member to the south, he does not, I don't think he ever wants to sell, and that's perfectly okay. Of course. 2, the restaurant takes up the balance of that under the podium on the parking, and so we park that as maximum as possible underneath the physical structure with the setbacks that were required under the zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so the reason this, I guess to Misha's point, what he's asking about or mentioning is this is a true mixed use that we're coming forth with here today. This is not just a stand up and down office structure. And so with high degree of intention, as Misha mentioned, collaboration, we already have the tenant who we've been engaged with for years now on trying to find them another home here in Broad Ripple. And so something that is, obviously, they started 42 years ago in Broad Ripple. We're extremely engaged in Broad Ripple. I know it wasn't mentioned, but we were the largest private donor to the Riverwalk that is going to be constructed here soon because of how important Broad Ripple Park is to the village. and connecting those things. And so that's why we want to move here. And so between him and us, this was that kind of exciting, happy medium of finding a location that really suits the next adventure for that family.
Just to add to respond to that question, because I think point one is that the true nature of the mixed use of the project. But if the restaurant wasn't there, we would be talking about needing more activation of Cornell if that was parking garage fronting Cornell, because I've had the same issue come up in other cases. So the idea with mixed use is that you provide for some activation of that Cornell frontage. There are other restaurants up and down Cornell, but you provide as much parking as you can. And of course, the restaurant needs, at least a minimum amount of space to operate. So it's a roundabout way of answering your question.
Thank you. Yeah, if you can go ahead with your rebuttal,
Sure.
please.
Yeah. Obviously, we're talking about parking here after all these years in Broad Ripple. I know we've had this conversation before, and it's definitely a balance. I mean, in part, what you're hearing here is planning staff wanting to eliminate that parking lot, and then a neighbor believing that there's insufficient parking. Just so we're clear, so Mr. McNulty, who also wrote a letter as a tenant in, I believe, Mr. Oaklack's building, so it's the same property. And I think what was stated, which is that building has no on-site parking spaces. And it's sort of also an example of how Broad Ripple operates. You use the on-street parking, and it is an urban setting. And so, we've had lots of cases come before you for parking variances, and this one's not materially different, other than we now have a TOD ordinance, and we, as I've said, understand that the ordinance discourages surface parking lots, but there's got to be a compromise. Broad Ripple cannot continue to operate with only businesses operating out of bungalows. And I'm not suggesting that should not remain a large part of what happens in Broad Ripple Village. It absolutely should. It's what we all love about Broad Ripple, is how quaint it is. But in order to sustain retail activity in Broad Ripple, more than just bars and nightlife, there have to be office workers, and there has to be substantial office daytime activity. And so what's being presented here is a compromise. It's a compromise to those two things. And folks like Mr. Oaklack and others who operate, businesses out of homes, that will always occur, and that's a terrific part of Broad Ripple and ought to be respected, but there's got to be a mix. And what the petitioner did in this case was do as much as possible to mitigate staff's concerns with the parking lot. And I'm a fan of the Joni Mitchell song that Kathleen quoted. That's probably very impressive, Kathleen. But what is presented here is not paving paradise to put up a parking lot. What we've tried to do is compromise by increasing the amount of landscaping and buffering and offering public art. Maybe Joni Mitchell would sing a different tune if she saw this, what's being presented here. But staff is correct. It's an integral part of what is being presented, and it represents in our minds a compromise to bring substantial office to Broad Ripple, while at the same time trying to mitigate some of the concerns about the number of parking spaces and the surface parking lot. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. We'd ask for your favorable approval. I believe Kathleen was suggesting that the approval ought to be subject to a commitment that the approval be tied to the most recently filed site plan and landscape plan, and that would be acceptable, I think, to our side. We probably intended that that anyway. Also wanted to note that the properties that are adjacent to the parking lot, those property owners have offered letters of support. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I don't think I have any additional questions. Remonstrators, rebuttal? No rebuttal? Okay. So I want to start by saying I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this. And I think that I appreciate, Mr. Rabinowitz, that you and your clients have listened to neighbors, stakeholders, Broad Ripple Village Association, staff, in making changes to the building elevations, the landscaping, the massing. I was involved in the Envision Broad Ripple process, was able to attend most of the meetings, and a lot of time and effort went into that. And I honestly don't know what, if anything else, can be done to alleviate the concern with the parking lot. And that is my sticking point as well. And I'm, again, at the risk of sounding like I'm trying to make light of something, this reminds me of something that Ray Good used to say, and Ray was typically a remonstrator's attorney, and he had some phrases that were just, never quite escaped my mind. And one of them was, you can dress a pig up in a tuxedo, but it's still a pig. Now, I'm not trying to compare the parking lot to a pig, but I think you have made some real effort to minimize the impact of that parking lot by using the pavers, by adding the landscaping, by adding art, and I think that's fantastic. I agree with staff that there's this issue. It's still a parking lot. And yes, I understand that is in direct conflict with then saying there's not enough parking. And again, I agree with your comment that the businesses that are in converted bungalows certainly have their place in Broad Ripple. But Broad Ripple does still need to encourage headquarters such as this one, such as the one under construction on College Avenue. And honestly, I don't know what the solution is, but I am not comfortable with that parking lot. And I agree with staff that because of that, you cannot separate out the vacation petition and the plat. It's not like the previous petitions that I heard where you could let the rezoning petition stand on its own, because I don't think you can do that here. So for that reason, I am going to recommend denial of 2022 CZN 821, CVR 821, and for CVC 821, I am going to find that the proposed vacation is not in the public interest and and I am not ratifying the adoption of Declaratory Resolution 2022 CVC 821. And then I am also recommending denial of 2022 CPL 821. Those will all be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th. Again, I very much appreciate your efforts, and I am very hopeful that there is some sort of solution. Thank you.
Ready. Our last public hearing is 2022 ZON 072 at 5041 East 16th Street, approximate address, Center Township, Council District 12. 4731 West Washington Street, LLC, by Russell L. Brown, requesting a rezoning of 0.63 acre from the C3 district to the C4 district to provide for a liquor store. Would all those intending to testify either for or against, please stand now and raise your right hand to be sworn in at this time. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. Thank you for your stick-to-itiveness to make it to our case today. With me today is Tony Colon, who is the principal and the contract purchaser for the above property, and also a partner in the operation of Speedway Liquors, which currently operates at 4933 East 16th Street, which desires and intends to relocate to the subject property upon the approval of this rezoning request. Today's request is very straightforward. It requests to rezone little more than 0.6 of an acre with primary frontage along East 16th Street and secondary frontage along Elliott from C3 to C4. We have not, during this application process, made any secrets that the purpose of this rezoning is to relocate that existing liquor store, approximately 500 feet from its current location. The current operators of this location have owned and operated the store for nearly 15 years, doing so without incident, but doing so in a residentially zoned property. The current location has been in existence for nearly 50 years, operating as a legal non-conforming use in a space of a little less than 4,000 square feet. When the opportunity to relocate to a larger facility outside of that residentially zoned property, but still in the same neighborhood, arose, the petitioner was intrigued at the opportunity. They have entered into a purchase agreement, initiated this rezoning, and also began the process to apply for a transfer of their liquor license to this location. The fact that this is a relocation of an existing, long-standing community business has been reassuring to the singular neighbor whose phone call I received, and as well to staff. Unfortunately, last week while I was out of office, I received the remonstrance letter from Mr. Carroll on behalf of the Archdiocese. The remonstrance letter objects to the rezoning based on some of the uses which are permitted in a C4 district but not in the C3. With the exception of the liquor store use, my clients would be willing to eliminate by commitment those uses included in Mr. Carroll's remonstrance letter. I did convey that to him earlier this week and again today, but unfortunately I was informed that the elimination of those uses alone is not enough to eliminate the remonstration. When we approached this petition, we did explore the possibility of doing a variance for the liquor store. But because of the comp plan recommendation of community commercial and the fact that there are only a few lots of the 16th and Emerson commercial node, which are now C3 instead of C4 as the bulk of them are, we determined that a rezoning was more appropriate. In an effort to be transparent about the use and intensity thereof, we did submit a plan of operation with the petition, which is in the file. It's not in the staff report, but I do have copies of it in case you do not have it with you today. I did share that with Mr. Carroll earlier this week, and the petitioner there would also be agreed to be bound by that plan of operation if it were to ease your concerns or the fears of the remonstrators. Finally, I will also address a few additional comments raised in this letter. First, this use is not new in the neighborhood, and it is not, by this move, moving closer to Cecina. The current operation and the proposed relocated operation are approximately the same distance from the school's athletics fields. They are between 190 to 200 feet from the building to the district line, according to GIS, which allows for a liquor store to operate at this location despite that proximity to the special use district. Second, these uses have coexisted in this proximity for decades. Mr. Carroll's letter talks about Cecina being at this location for nearly 70 years. This operation has been here, we believe, for approximately 50 years. So this is not a new operation and a new proximity. As someone who ran for office once in this area of the city and as an east side and northeast side resident for nearly 20 years, I understand the importance of Cecina to this neighborhood. I also equally understand the history of other prominent alcohol-focused uses at the 16th and Emerson intersection, which are in fact closer to the high school than the petitioner's current or relocated store. These uses, the Shy K and this proposed liquor store, have coexisted together here literally for decades. There are no allegations in Mr. Carroll's letter or to our knowledge that the petitioner is an operator who has problems with the excise police, and even if they did, those matters are best addressed before the local alcohol beverage board, not, in our opinion, in a zoning petition. We do believe that the proposed rezoning before you today is in line with the comp plan. It fits in with the uses surrounding it and would have no impact on the use or enjoyment of surrounding properties. While we would be happy to make commitments to eliminate the uses outlined in the remonstrance letter and be bound by the plan of operation, neither of those have been requested by staff or would seem to appease the concerns of the remonstrators. If those conditions do give you, as the hearing examiner, more comfort in making a favorable recommendation to the Metropolitan Development Commission on this matter, we would be willing to agree to such commitments. Madam Hearing Examiner, we believe this petition stands ready for your favorable recommendation with or without the commitments offered today, and we would ask that you give such a recommendation. We would incorporate our materials into the record, and the petitioner and I are both here to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Brown, can you give me the address again of the current location?
4933 East 16th Street. It's literally 500 feet property line to property line.
Okay, thank you. So it's just to the west a little bit?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And it's in a D5 district.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's across, this map is hard to read, across west of Bancroft.
Yes,
Is that right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Carroll, remonstrance?
Thank you, Ms. Wurzel. My name is Paul Carroll. Offices at 13 North State Street, Suite 241 in Greenfield, Indiana. Represent the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Indianapolis, as well as the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Indianapolis Properties, Inc. The properties entity owns Cecina's real estate, and the Archdiocese operates Cecina High School on this location. As the petitioner mentioned, Cecina's operated at this location for approximately 70 years. It's a cornerstone of this neighborhood. 80% of our students participate in 20 different IHSA sports, utilizing our sports fields around the Cecina campus. The petitioner has requested, and we have requested a denial of rezoning the subject parcel from a C3 zone to a C4 zone. As the petitioner mentioned, while this is not a variance, a rezoning of this location to C4 would not only approve of the expressly requested liquor store, but those other uses such as tattoo parlors, adult entertainment businesses, nightclubs, hotels, firearm sales, and heavy retail. There are 5 considerations to be made in determining whether or not to approve a rezoning request. whether or not the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, current conditions and character of the surrounding structures, the most desirable use for the real estate, conservation of property values, and responsible development and growth. The comprehensive plan calls for this parcel to be used in the community commercial manner, which the pattern book provides that smaller, low-intensity uses are appropriate in that location. While it could be argued that a liquor store is a smaller, lower-intensity use, many of the other appropriate uses within the C4 zone would not be community commercial type uses, specifically heavy retail, which is more of an intense use. The most desirable use of this real estate, in my opinion, Ms. Examiner, is that it is a buffer for Cecinas High School and educational uses. Surrounding all of Cecina are residential dwellings zoned for residential use, except for the northeast corner, which is zoned C3. The C4 zone exists outside of that one block area, which would be appropriate without any rezoning request for the petitioner's use. The next consideration is the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. We have submitted written materials prior to today, identifying 2 studies, one in Chicago, one in Boston, I believe, noting the increase in violent crimes, murder, sexual assault, rape, within a proximity of an off-location liquor store, meaning that liquor is sold and taken off-site to be consumed. It is hard to square an increase in local crime with an off-premises liquor store with conserved or increased property values within the immediate area. I do understand that this location has operated for 50 years, literally right down the street. It's moving approximately 500 feet from the west. It is currently buffered from Cecinas High School by a row of residential dwellings. You wouldn't be able to stand on Cecinas campus and see that this location is present. The subject parcel they're looking to move to stretches all the way south to Elliott Avenue, which is immediately across the street from Cecinas High School. It will be closer to the nearest structure, and we don't believe that that moving a liquor store immediately across the street from a high school is protective of the values of neighboring real estate. Probably the last consideration to be made is for responsible development and growth. I believe this weighs the most against approving a liquor store or approving a C4 zoned property across the street from a high school. We've submitted with our materials a study that showed, performed in California, took data from approximately 2,800 students from 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, and they found that the proximity of a liquor store to a school would lead to an increased likelihood of lifelong drinking. Again, we have a very strong interest in producing college-ready and life-ready students from Cecina High School. We don't believe placing a liquor store or any of the other C4 potential uses across the street from the school is a responsible development of that area. While we certainly appreciate the petitioner's proposal to commit to not using those other C4 uses, there have been there's just not going to be a way for us to support a liquor store moving in across the street from our location when it is not zoned currently to permit that, and that there are C4 designated areas immediately outside of that C3 block that acts as a buffer to Cecina. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you'd have. Otherwise, I'll conclude.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Keith, staff report, please.
Sorry, I'll flip my switch here, and now I'll speak. Yes, staff is recommending approval of this petition. When this petition was originally assigned to me, I looked at it and saw that it was C4 for a liquor store and that it was within close proximity of a school, and that concerned me. And so I looked up the ordinance to see if it met the separation standard in the ordinance. And indeed it does. Whenever there's an intervening street, that is sufficient to meet the separation provision of the ordinance. Staff was probably most swayed in recommending approval of this petition because it's essentially moving an existing business in the neighborhood from its current location to this location. And the value of this move to the city is that in the new location it will not be abutting any residences, whereas in its current location the liquor store does abut residences. The new location is also closer to the commercial node at Emerson and 16th Street, whereas the other one is more distant from the central part of that node, and so is in a location more likely to affect residences. The current location is no closer to the high school than the current location, although maybe by about 8 feet. There is separation between the old location and the new location. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The separation between the school and the old location is provided by residences. The separation between the school and the new location is a wooded area. Now, the petitioner does not control all of that wooded area. They control just one lot of it. But if you look at the staff photo on page 228 at the top, you'll see that it's a pretty dense vegetation area, and so does provide some screening. As the presentations were being made today, I had another thought about this site that I wish I'd have thought of so I could have gotten it into the staff report. It may not make any difference to anyone else except for somebody looking at the map, but possibly that south lot could be removed from the petition, have it remain C3, and have the C4 only be the northern lots. I have not proposed this to either the petitioner or the remonstrator, and I don't know what their thoughts on that would be. But in general, staff's recommendation of approval on this is based on the thought that the new location is more conducive to the neighborhood than the old location, and that with the liquor store moving out of the old location, a new one would not be able to move in. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Keith. I wondered too about that lot, if it was being proposed for use. And I suppose...
And we may want to ask, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was probably remiss in not asking for a commitment for tree preservation on that lot so that that buffering could remain.
Okay. And I guess another option would be, and obviously we're going to get input from both sides, but another option would be go ahead and keep it included in the rezoning, but saying that uses of that lot could only be C3. So, yes, good idea. Mr. Brown, if you could, before you start your rebuttal, if you want to just comment on the ideas that we're making for you.
I can comment on a part of it. The tree preservation question, we haven't done a tree inventory, so I don't know that we're ready to make a commitment as it relates to tree preservation on that location. I think the only anticipated potential future use there would be for parking if it ever were to be developed. So C3 use or C4 use, I don't know that that matters to our client. So I don't know that, frankly, whether it's in or out, whether we only keep it as C3 or only allow C3 uses there would be acceptable to us. So from that perspective, whichever way was easiest would be there. But as it relates to a tree preservation, I don't think that we can, we don't know what's there. We haven't done that. We don't control the property yet there. So obviously there are standards, and we would need to comply with those standards to the extent there was to be any development there. So that's a long way to say if that's a path forward, I think that we would be willing to utilize it that way. I'll talk about a couple points. I don't know that I need significant. I won't use all 5 of my minutes, but I do find it somewhat curious that we rely on a buff. First of all, Scecina High School's front entrance is to the south. Your entrance to the parking lot is to the south. These are the athletic fields. I can't tell from the aerial, and I have not driven by there. I did not look when I drove by there. I don't know that there's any direct access from Scecina High School to Elliott Avenue. So while this is your football field, some of your other athletic fields, there's a parking lot there. Direct access to the high school is to the south. It is not to the intervening street. The setback requirements do, as Mr. Holsworth indicated, do provide for an intervening street being to allow for specific uses to be located nearby to protected districts. Also, the measurement is not from the edge of the property, it's from the building itself. And so this, even without the intervening street, would meet that separation requirement because it's more than, as a standalone building, meets that separation requirement. I will point out, too, that while Mr. Carroll's argument is that this portions of this block constitute a buffer of C3 to the Scecina property, I will point out that there are significant C4 uses that are closer to the Scecina property than this proposed building are, including a bar that stays open till 3 o'clock on a regular basis. So there are more intense uses that are closer to Scecina's property, even though they might be in they're in a C4 district, but they're physically closer. I also am struck a little bit by the hyperbole included in the letter as well as the testimony today to claim that an existing operating user who's been there for roughly 50 years is going to lead to an increase in violent assaults in the neighborhood or to an increase in teen drinking in the neighborhood. I realize those are studies, national studies, but it's somewhat hyperbolic from my perspective when we're talking about relocation of an existing business 500 feet within our community. And Mr. Holdsworth made a comment that this moves this use from closer to the node. I would argue that this makes this use in the node, not closer to the node, but in the node at this location. Across the street, you have C4 uses, intense C4 uses to the north of 16th Street, and this use would be directly across the street from some of those C4 uses. So I do believe it brings you into the commercial node to be part of the commercial node. Frankly, though I've driven this portion of 16th Street literally hundreds of times because I worked at 14th and Arlington when I was going to law school, so I drive down 16th Street. I forgot how close this building was to Emerson. It is very close to Emerson. Those are very narrow lots. It is very, very close to to Emerson and 16th commercial node. We think this is a much more appropriate location for this use, for an established, reputable user, and we think we would ask for your favorable recommendation, and we will leave it to your discretion about our offers related to commitments. We're fine to make those commitments to remove those uses and to be bound by the plan of operation, or we're fine to move forward without them. So whichever way you choose to do so, we'd be happy either way. and happy to answer questions that you have.
Mr. Brown, what is the date of the plan of operation?
It was whatever date I filed.
Because I haven't seen that. Doesn't have a date on it.
I don't think there's a date on there, but I could reverse engineer the date real quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you could check on that, that'd be great.
I would, if I had to bet, it would be either May 18th or May 19th, would be
Okay.
what date it was filed.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just make it.
Madam Hearing Examiner, according to the record that I'm showing on our server, the submittal date for 2022 companions at 831 at 1616 East 25th is registered on our records as May 12th, 2022.
Oh, I was ahead of the time.
May 12th, okay.
I got it in early. I'm usually right under the deadline, so that's how I could.
Okay, and then, Mr. Carroll, have you seen this plan of operation? I have, yes. Okay, all right. So you said it's May 12th.
Actually, I'm mistaken. That is the wrong case number. This is Zone 72, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Zone 072 for 5041 East 16th has a submittal file date of May 19th.
Okay. Perfect. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Carroll, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, please.
Thank you. Again, Paul Carroll. I won't use all 5 minutes. Just very briefly, I wanted to point out that it was noted, and I want to be clear on this, currently there is a row of houses providing buffering between this use and Cecina High School. As I think everyone has pointed out, the new lot, the proposed lot, reaches all the way down to Elliott. If it's zone C3 or C4, as the petitioner pointed out, it could be used as a parking lot, which would provide no sort of buffering or screening between Cecina's athletic fields and the liquor store use. Previously, I'd went through the 5 considerations made when approving or denying a rezone petition. None of those concerns is whether or not the use is currently in an inappropriate place and it's going to be moved to a less inappropriate place. It's our position that each of the considerations weigh against this use in this location and would request that you deny the approval. Thank you.
Madam Hearing Examiner, I'm sorry, one more time. There's an inconsistency in our filing system. The file date that appears actually on the plan of operation in the file says that it was file dated May 23rd. And that is the date that is actually depicted on the document rather than the system we traditionally use. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, I think we'll just go with the site plan that was, or the plan of operation that was submitted as an exhibit today to avoid any confusion. Okay, and I appreciate your input, Mr. Carroll. I appreciate your representation of the Archdiocese. I understand their concern. Let's just leave it at that. I understand their concern. In my opinion, though, I do think it's relevant that an existing business that's been in the community for 50 years wants to stay in the neighborhood and is relocating 500 feet to the east. The petitioner has offered to limit some of the C4 uses, but that doesn't seem to affect the Archdiocese position, so I'm not gonna require that as a commitment. I am gonna recommend approval of this petition subject to the plan of operation that was submitted as an exhibit today. I agree with Keith. I would like to see some tree preservation, but I understand that with this just being requested today, it's difficult for Mr. Brown to agree to that. I would ask, though, that that there be a commitment that any future use of that southern lot would prohibit access from Elliott Avenue. I guess I should have asked that first. In my opinion, vehicular access from Elliott Avenue should be prohibited.
I think if you impose that as a condition, you make the lot unusable, because I can show you on the survey why that's the position that we would take.
Okay.
If you.
Okay, so Mr. Brown is showing me a survey that shows that due to the building location, there wouldn't be a way to get to that south lot from the main part of the site, which I can't really tell that. I guess looking at it now on the aerial, I can see that. And it looks like the property to the east already has access from Elliott. Keith, do you have any thoughts on that?
I feel less strongly about having a commitment about no vehicular access from Elliott than I think what gets more to the point is that there's adequate screening between the liquor store and the school, and I believe that the tree preservation is more important, and to be a little bit hard-nosed about it, I believe that that should be a commitment, and if the petitioner doesn't agree with that commitment, then they have the opportunity to appeal it to the MDC.
Okay, okay. And again, I understand Mr. Brown's position that since it wasn't requested previously, he's not, yeah. And yeah, I see what you're saying, Keith. Mr. Brown, would you be in agreement with that then to be able to assess what that tree preservation would look like?
I mean, I guess
between now and when you have to appeal?
That's 5 days. I don't know that I can have a tree I can get it. I can guarantee I can't get a surveyor out there to do a tree inventory in 5 days. I mean, I guess here's my view on it. We have a heritage tree ordinance. To the extent any of those trees qualify as a heritage tree, then we have significant, significant replacement obligations if we were to try to develop that lot. Again, that's a hypothetical. It's a future, as you noticed in our plan of operation, it's a future potential someday later to do that. Because there are serious considerations about the cost of doing it because of the heritage tree requirements. I think what we could, and maybe let me talk with my client, I have an idea about something that we could perhaps, utilize as a buffer or something to the south of the building so that we wouldn't clear cut it all the way to the building, but let me talk to him real quick before we.
Yeah, I wonder if we could say that we would require tree preservation in the transitional yard.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to hear you sometimes, Keith. So you're saying require tree preservation in the transitional yard?
Transitional yard. Because the point is to keep
Yes.
that buffer as
Yes.
much as we can between the two uses.
Yes.
Could you remind me of the transitional yard from SU to C4? See, if you don't remember it off the top.
I would need my ordinance in front of me.
If you don't remember it off the top of your head, I feel better that I don't remember it off the top of my head. Eddie's going to look it up.
Thank you. Kathleen, did you have another idea?
Well, I was going to say.
Or were you going to sing for us this time?
No, I can't come up with a song that relates to what I'm going to say. Well, but anyway. There have been times when staff has requested a tree preservation and it has not occurred. I mean, it's after the fact. Does that make sense? After the rezoning? It's just part of the commitments of the rezoning. And so they come in, they submit that prior, and it's usually prior to the issuance of an improvement location permit.
No, but I thought what Mr. Brown was saying, he just wasn't sure he wanted to commit to doing a tree preservation plan.
Okay.
That's what I thought he meant.
Okay, I thought, okay.
But
I misunderstood.
maybe not.
No.
No.
Madam Hearing Examiner, the transitional yard requirement in the C4 district in the compact context area that does not abut an alley, which I do not believe Elliott Avenue is, would be 10 feet for the side and rear yard.
Is that a rear yard or a front yard? Because that's
This would be.
I believe the question is for the rear yard along Elliott.
But that's not a rear yard. That's a front yard because that's a street.
Yeah. Still 10 feet.
Okay. So is the request of staff that we would do tree preservation in that transitional yard, except we would have to have a drive access along there. So you'd be doing a tree preservation area in that transitional yard. Is that the request that I just heard?
The commitment I'm asking for now is to provide a tree preservation plan showing significant preservation of the existing vegetation within the transitional yard, and that the plan must be submitted for administrator's approval prior to the issuance of an ILP.
I think we could do that. ILP for the parking lot, because we're not planning to do any parking there initially. So it would be when or if that lot is developed.
An ILP for any ILP for the entire site. So your site fronting Elliott and your site fronting 16th Street. Because it's the liquor store that you're putting on 16th Street that needs to be buffered.
No, I understand.
From
What
the
I'm saying,
school to the south.
Yeah, what I'm saying is there's no intention, you could potentially need an ILP to do a sign for
In lieu then of the ILP, then within 60 days of the grant of this rezoning.
we can agree to that.
Thank you. Okay. So to get us back on track then, I am going to recommend approval of 2022 ZON 072, subject to the plan of operation that was submitted today, subject to subject to a commitment that can you repeat what you said?
That a tree preservation plan shall be submitted for administrator's approval within 60 days of the grant of the petition, showing significant tree preservation in the transitional yard along Elliott Street.
Okay. Perfect. And then that's it. And then this will, I'm not going to do anything with the south lot as far as C3 uses or.
And then there was the plan of operation.
Yeah, I said the plan of operation. Yeah. All right. And this will be heard by the Metropolitan Development Commission on July 20th. Thank you. Is there any other business before us today? Okay, we are adjourned.